In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at the second of two dash cams that Vantrue sent me. Now, this is the smaller and cheaper of those two, and it's quite a neat little thing. There aren't that many small dash cams on the market, but if I put it next to this 9-volt battery here for scale, you can see how compact it really is. Now let's have a look what you get inside the box. First off, there's the instruction leaflet, then there's a standard USB A to Mini B lead for data transfer. We've got a car power adapter, and that's one of those ones that's got an extra USB port in the top, which can be quite handy. And then of course we've got the mount system. I'll show you more on that in a moment. And then finally, of course, the camera itself. We'll just go back and take a closer look at that mount for a second. You can see on the right here there's some metal pins, and those connect to an interface on the top of the camera. On the bottom here there's a suction cup, and on the left of the mount that's where the power lead goes in. The lead goes into the mount, and then the power is supplied through the mount and into the camera. You can see that's how you attach the suction cup to the windscreen, by twisting that bit at the back. We've got a ball joint here which enables you to tilt the camera or twist it left and right. And then it disconnects by squeezing that part there and pulling it forward. You can see those pins and how they connect to the pins on the top of the camera. The idea is, of course, you can leave the wires in place in the car and just remove the camera when you need to. Now in the top here, I've got my micro SD card. The one I put in here is a 32 gig class 10. 32 gigs is the maximum the camera will support. On the base of the camera there's a reset hole, an HDMI out, a USB port, as well as some ventilation holes. Now those silver parts on the bottom and the top, those are made out of metal. It gives the camera a reassuring weight, but it also presumably acts as a heatsink to prevent overheating. To the left of the lens there's a little window, behind that is an IR LED, and the camera itself looks quite a lot like a normal little compact digital camera. Now let's go through the buttons. On the side here we've got 3 buttons. The middle one starts and stops the video, the bottom one's a power, the top one takes a snapshot, a still image. Now if we go on the back here, there's another 3 buttons. We've got up and down and menu, but also those are multifunction. The top one's emergency, the middle one turns the mic on and off, and the bottom one activates the parking mode. There's a microphone hole there at the bottom, and on the side here I'm presuming that's the hole for the speaker. And we've got a 1.5 inch LCD screen on the back. Now let's turn it on here. Now the screen on this is tiny, but it is nice and sharp, and you can see everything on it as long as you get close enough to it, of course. Now I'll start it recording. I just want to point out though that of course dash cams automatically start recording. You don't normally have to do this. You can see the indicator flashing at the top left of the screen there. I can turn the mic on and off here. I'll show you more on that later on because they've made that a little bit clearer in a new firmware. Press the M button at the top, that locks the current file that's being recorded and stops it getting overwritten. The buttons on here are illuminated, as you can see, which is a nice touch. Now if we tap the bottom button, notice there's a little lamp indicator that comes on in the middle of the screen there. That means I've turned on that IR LED on the front. You might just be able to make it out there with the camera. Not too sure why that's on there. I suppose if you wanted to take the camera out of the car and take some snapshots. Now to take snapshots you have to have the camera recording as it is there. And then you press the top button on the right here. Look for the little camera icon in the middle there. That means it's took a snapshot, a still frame of that video, and stored it in again a separate folder full of photos. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is hold down that bottom button to show you what the parking mode looks like. Look on the left of the screen, you'll see a P appear, and that means we're in parking mode. If you've got the camera continuously powered, it can be motion activated whilst it's parked, and it'll see people walking past your car and things, but you do have to have a permanent power supply to the camera to activate that feature. Now all dashcams are based around a standard set of features, and then they add to those depending on which particular area of dashcamery they're specialising in. So if you're new to dashcams, I've tried to put as many of these as I can think of on screen. So if you press pause, read through that, that gives you a good starter for dashcams. Now this particular model has an HDMI out on the bottom, and I use that to capture the video from the camera. So you can see the on-screen menus there. Let's move through them. We've got record, and then system, and then finally files. So let's go through these one at a time. It won't take long, it's quite a simple camera. As far as resolution goes, the top resolution is 1080p 30, and of course it goes down from there. Now loop recording, the length of your segments, I'll show you the options on screen here. Again, if you don't know what this is, you should have read the bit I just showed you. HDR, You can switch that off if you want, but I just leave it on. It seems to make it look better. Motion detection. Now this has been renamed in a new firmware to say parking mode, but that's where you switch it on and off. I'll show you that later on in the video. Now the G sensor is of course the thing that locks the files when the camera receives a shock. I set it to low in my car and didn't get any false files locked. By that I mean locked files whenever I went over a pothole, so I've had no problems with this camera. It's worked fine in that regard. Now if we go into the system menu, here are the language options. You can set the date and time in there. That's where you can put your car registration number or whatever it is you want to put in there. And then the bottom one, stamp, lets you choose what you want to show on the corner of your video. Whether you want the date and time stamp, the logo stamp and the registration number, or any combination of those three, or none at all if that's what takes your fancy. So this is what it looks like with nothing on. And then that's with the logo stamp, that's with the registration number stamp, and that's with the time and date. And then this final one is with everything switched on. Over the page, self-explanatory, we've got the auto LCD off. That's the time it takes before the screen blanks. People do ask me about this. Does the screen turn off in the dark? Yeah, every dashcam screen turns off. It's a standard feature. So moving down the screen here, you can see all these things are quite normal. Nothing exciting going on. I'll just mention the version number though there. You see on the right, 15th of February 16. That was the firmware that I was using to demonstrate those, but I've got a new firmware that I'll show you later on. Into the file menu, this is where the video files are stored. So we'll just have a look at one of these. Again, this is playing over the HDMI from the camera. So you got the information at the top there showing you the time and date it was recorded. We can fast forward through this if we want to. And of course we could rewind. And if you wanted, you could pause it. But I'll show you some proper videos now. I've got some sample clips available to download as I always do. So you can download those if you want to see the true quality. But let's have a look at these on YouTube. Now before anyone gets confused about the car changing colour, yes, believe it or not, somebody did. I've got two cars. It's not that amazing, but yeah, there are two cars. One for me, pretty much one for the missus. This is the Smart Roadster Coupe. This is the black bonnet vehicle. This is quite a shaky car. It's very low down. It's got quite a few vibrations, being a kind of roadster type thing. And you might better hear the click on the soundtrack. The mount seems to be rattling around a little bit. That's the only negative I've got about this camera. The mount seems to rattle a little bit, but maybe with a bit of investigation you could perhaps tape that up or something. But as far as the video quality goes, excellent, really sharp, edge to edge, all around the picture. And as far as looking at this registration number in front goes, look, as it goes off into the distance, it still remains nice and sharp and legible. A lot of people do want a dash cam that can see a reg number at quite a distance, and this definitely fulfills that requirement. Again, if it looks rubbish on YouTube, download a sample. Now this is one of those dash cams where you get to the end of one segment, you get a little bit of overlap with the next one. Look for the red car coming past on the right and you'll see what I mean in a second. Just wait for it. And there, that was two clips being joined together. Now if that's the kind of thing that concerns you, it shouldn't do, because it means you do capture everything. But if you really wanted to have it look nice, look what I've done there. I've taken off a fraction of a second off the second clip, and then it flows smoothly in editing. So don't worry about that, and you can have really long clips of course if you want. Oh, the car's changed colour. No, this is the other car. This is the Mini Cooper. So as you can see here, again, just wanted to show you a bit of a sunnier image, but lovely and sharp. So let's have a look how it copes in the dark. Now again, pretty good performance here. Overall, I'm quite impressed with the video quality from this camera, and there is one thing in particular that I liked with this camera, and it was to do with the sound quality from the microphone. Quite often I've had dash cams that didn't sound particularly good, but this one bucks that trend a little bit. So let's just go over to me in the car and have a listen. Now one thing I noticed particularly about this camera was that the audio recording seemed to be good compared to most dash cams anyway. I was testing some footage that I'd recorded earlier during the daytime, playing it back on the computer, and I noticed how clear it sounded. You could hear the indicators, you could even hear the other cars driving past. Now some of the dash cams I've reviewed have had pretty poor sound quality. Now to a lot of people that's not that big a deal, but there are people out there who want really good quality sound recording as well as video. So I think this camera is definitely one of the better ones that I've seen for the quality of the sound that it records. Now there's something I need to get across here, and it's very important. If you can see any stuttering on this video, I want you to completely discount it, ignore it entirely, because it was caused by myself. The reason it's there is because I had to rush out of the house quickly. I put the camera in the car, but I'd left the power leads in the other vehicle. I thought, well, it's okay, I can run it off the battery. However, the battery only lasts for 15 minutes. So by the time I got to this part here, the battery was running low, and that's what was causing the stuttering on the video. You're not supposed to run it off the battery, of course. You're supposed to power it from your lighter socket or your hardwire kit. And as long as it's properly powered down a wire, you won't see a single stutter. I just needed to explain that there. Right, let's talk about camera firmware for a moment. When I did all those tests, the camera was using this firmware, which is the 15th of Feb 16. Now, there was a bit of an issue with that because it wasn't displaying the time and date stamp properly at the bottom of the video. So I got in touch with Vantrue, told them this. They quickly sent me over a new firmware. I put it on this camera, and you can see here I've now got the 14th of May 16 firmware. And that's what I used earlier on to demonstrate the time and date stamp, as you see there. That's all been fixed now, works fine. But it also added in a couple extra features. You can see the on-screen graphics have changed colour here, but that makes it a lot easier to see when you've turned the mic on and off. As you can see here, it's a lot clearer than it was before. And then in addition to that, if we go into the menus and have a look at the file menu, you can see we've now split the video files into normal and event or emergency files. And then the final thing that I've spotted on this menu here at the bottom, it now says parking monitor, which is better because it used to say motion activation, which was confusing because it is actually the setting to turn the parking monitor on or off. Now let's just go through a couple of specs here. At the top I've put battery life. I mentioned this is irrelevant. You're not supposed to run it off battery, but people do sometimes ask. So it's got 15 minutes worth of battery life, which is enough for you to get the camera out of the car and show a policeman whatever happened on the video, as long as you can see it on that little tiny screen on the back. Now, as far as video bitrate goes, you can see there 12.4 megabits a second in the highest resolution, which is 1080p 30. By my calculations, on a 32 gig card, you can fit approximately 5.5 hours of your latest driving footage. And of course, as with all dash cams, it'll rewrite over that once it's full. So I suppose the only issues that I can think of to do with this camera are that the mount rattles around a little bit inside my vehicle. I don't know what that's about. I'd have to investigate it a little bit more thoroughly. Maybe it's just something that I could tighten up or put a bit of tape round or something. And the only other issue to do with the mount is you've got to make sure you get it on right to start with. If you get the camera at a bit of an angle like that, you can't twist it side to side and straighten it up. You have to take the mount off the windscreen again just to get the camera pointing straight, but not such a big deal. And once you've got it right, you leave the mount in the car and just remove the camera every time you need to. And the only other thing I want to stress is this is a small camera. It's not microscopic, but it is smaller than most dash cams that I've tested, and that makes it quite good for hiding away at the top of the windscreen. I've just stuck it up here to demonstrate to you exactly how it works with the wiring going along the top. Of course, you'd hide that away in your roof lining. I've just put it in there temporarily, but from the outside it isn't particularly obvious. Those silver bits do show up a little bit, but it isn't a massive dash cam. And again, of course, if you wanted, you could just unclip it if you parked somewhere that you weren't too happy about. Now, if you want to get hold of one of these, I've had to rush this video out today because apparently they've got an offer on 17th of May 16 for 3 days where it's $30 off. They only sell it on Amazon.com in the US. I've got a voucher code in the video description that you'll be able to use for those 3 days, but if it's gone past that date, just go and have a look anyway. Maybe it's been reduced again, who knows. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.